Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalist Roundtable. We'll take a look at the week's top stories, including Attorney General Kris Mayes' new attempt to revive Arizona's fake electors case. The Journalist Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening. Welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Rick DeBrule, filling in for Ted Simons this week. It's Friday, and that means it is time for the Journalist Roundtable. And joining us tonight, Jeremy Duda of Axios Phoenix, Wayne Schutsky from KJZZ Radio, and Dennis Welch of CBS 5 and 3 TV. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. And let's start off by talking about Kris Mayes and the fake electors case. For a lot of folks, they kind of thought it had gone away. They didn't realize there was still anything going on. So what actually happened this week?
So the Supreme Court considered Mayes' appeal of a lower court ruling. Basically what the judge there had said is that prosecutors didn't provide the actual text of a law that these fake electors say gave them the legal pathway to do what they did, which was sign an alternate slate of electors claiming Donald Trump won the 2020 election, which he didn't, and that the case needed to go back to the grand jury, provide that evidence if they wanted to move forward. So Mayes thought the prosecutors did enough, appealed that, but both a Court of Appeals and now the Supreme Court said nope, so the Attorney General has to go back to a grand jury.
And what does that mean when you say you go back to the grand jury now?
This is like, back to square one, back to the drawing board. I mean, pick your cliche there. If she wants to go back and do this again,
Understanding that pretty much every other state has given up this process.
Yeah, and again, it's 2026, and we're still talking about this 2020 election. Moving forward on this, it'll be interesting to see, if they do the grand jury thing again. What's it going to look like this time moving forward? And I'm sure they're going to dot their T's and dot their I's and cross their T's on this one, because we're in this mess because they didn't do their due diligence in the beginning.
And why did they fight it? Why not just go back and redo it the way they were supposedly supposed to from the beginning?
Well, I think that's kind of what they're going to do now. They're going to go back. I'm certain they will very diligently read the full text of the Electoral Count Act of 1887, present all these same, they'll present, I would imagine, pretty much the same arguments that they presented the last time with that one very critical piece. I think they summarized it last time, but didn't read the full thing. So, instead of, dot the I's, cross the T's, but the upshot is this could take a while, Mayes started this investigation a few months after she took office in 2023. From there, I think it took about a year before we actually saw indictments. And so that means it could be as much as a year until we see if, a grand jury, re-indicts these folks. It could be up to a year. And what is going to happen during that year? There's an election for Attorney General, where Kris Mayes could find herself out of a job in January. And if that happens, then this case is just going to, and on day one, if it's, Warren Peterson or Rodney Glassman as Attorney General, on day one, that'll probably be their first order of business. They both said they'll drop it. This is something very important to the Republican base to get rid of this case. And so,
and you got to kind of wonder, too, politically, before it even gets there, if this is something that the Republican candidates running for that job is not going to try to make some political hay out of, saying, look at what Kris Mayes has done with this office.
Well, there's no question they're going to do that. I guess the question is it going to be an effective way to run a campaign?
It could be. Weaponization of things. This could be something that they could point to and say, look, she's weaponized this office. She couldn't get any real indictments initially, but she's continuing to do this and go after these people. Remember, it's been 6 years since that election. Our voters, they have their memories that good? Do they remember everything that happened with that 2020 election and everything that happened after that?
Well, for Republican primary voters, the weaponization argument will be very potent because this is something that they're all very concerned. In a general election, I'm not sure that'll be quite the same level of argument, but in a general election, you have to wonder how much appetite people outside of Democrats, who of course also care very much about pursuing this case and bringing.
Is this ancient history, in other words?
I think for a lot of these people, even a lot of voters who probably weren't too happy with what they saw, on January 6th and with the Republican electors after the 2020 election, a lot of them folks are not really going to get that animated, I think, about, hey, we need to see this case to the conclusion, so, keep it up.
The Trump administration has been accused of using the grand jury and just going back again and again. Can that accusation be made against Kris Mayes in this case, or is this a different scenario?
That's definitely the accusation now that some of the attorneys for the accused fake electors are making in this case. And, we've all kind of heard the different phrases, a prosecutor can get an indictment against a baked potato from a grand jury or something to that effect. And, but again, I guess we have to, if we're going to get into the minutia of this indictment, it's really they didn't give them the text of the law. They actually did have one of the accused architects of the whole scheme come in and explain the legal theory to the grand jury, is what testimony was made in the case when I was in the courtroom. So I don't know, I mean, but do voters care about getting into the minutia of the case? Or again, are they just either tired or ambivalent 6 years on? We're seeing polling on defense of democracy issues get lower and lower every year out we get from 2020.
Yeah, especially in a year when like voters' minds right now are on affordability and like lowering gas prices and making life a little bit more affordable than it is. So again, that appetite, that desire to see this as a major focal point. I mean, I just don't know if it's there.
Sure, and Chris Mays, I'll keep in mind how many, 40-something lawsuits, I think, she has joined against the Trump administration in some fashion, has really made herself kind of the face of the Democratic resistance in the state, and that's something that the Republican nominee, whether it's Peterson or Glassman, is definitely going to try to use against her. And I think this will, I don't know how much this will, voters would care about this compared to some of the other stuff, but it'll all get kind of lumped into the same argument, I think.
So since we're talking about voters, it's time to actually have voters vote here in Arizona. The primary election officially is next month, but early voting here in Arizona begins in just 3 weeks. So, I mean, we're now right around the corner from the first activity in terms of voting. And I want to do a little primer and talk about kind of where we're at. And the first thing I want to talk about, because there's been a lot of discussion about, early ballots and whether they're going to be allowed, whether the postal office is, if I'm a voter and I'm getting ready to think about voting in this primary election, is anything actually different for me?
There's not a ton of differences from the last time around. The difference is that some of the people running, at least here in Maricopa County, aren't really getting along. So there are some very real concerns about how these elections are going to run if these sides, the Board of Supervisors and the Recorder, aren't talking. I mean, one new law that people can take advantage of is if you're dropping off an early ballot and you want to have it counted right away, you can actually show an ID to have that verified versus putting it through signature verification, which takes a little bit longer. So that's a new thing. But I think the bigger issue that a lot of people are worried about is that disagreement between the actual administrators of this election.
Where will the drop boxes be? Will we have drop boxes?
Exactly.
That is the latest iteration of the supervisors versus recorder heap fight.
I was going to say, so we need to explain for those of us those viewers who are not paying complete attention, what's going on in the role of the people who are overseeing this election, in particular here in Maricopa County.
Well, God, it's hard to figure out.
Can you sum this up in 45 seconds?
Well, there's a long-running fight between the supervisors and Recorder Justin Heap over the division, over who gets which election duties. And the supervisor, actually, before Heap was elected, had moved to kind of take some back for the Board of Supervisors. Heap has gone to court over this. A judge has ruled that the supervisors need to give some back, but that's being appealed. In the meantime, we have the most recent fight over this is over drop boxes, which boards of supervisors have always, long decided the locations of these. A lot of, more MAGA Republicans do not like the existence of drop boxes at all. And Justin Heap suddenly kind of popped up and said, hey, I'm the one who gets to decide this under the law. And so this is, I think now he's asking for, supervisors to be found in contempt for this, or I'm not sure if it's just for the drop boxes or if it's for all the stuff. It's all, every week it's something, new in this fight.
So going back to, if I'm a voter, do I care about any of that? Or should I just focus on I mean, I'm going to have to do anything different?
I don't think by and large there's not going to be any difference. I mean, Wayne's talking about, one new law out there where you can get your early ballot counted in right away if you go there. There's not a lot of changes, I think, by and large for the average voter out there. And if I could take a stab at maybe trying to summarize basically what's going on there, it's just your classic power struggle over there between the county recorder and the Maricopa County Board. What's underlying all of that stuff is,
which, by the way, is Republicans and one Democrat against Republicans.
And you can look at it as like almost MAGA versus, never Trumpers maybe, or
except for
traditional Republicans.
And Debbie Lesko, who is a big Trump fan, so it's all over the place.
So there you go. But this is a board that have gone through years of being accused of, of doing the wrong thing with elections. This is a board that has that experience there with that. And then you've got Justin Heap, who's been elected, and he certainly introduced when he was in the legislature some legislation that was kind of inspired by some of the election deniers and people that live in that world. So that's kind of the underlying tones of what's going on with this fight.
All right, so now that's the political going on behind the scenes.
yeah.
We have the actual races themselves. But we got some pretty interesting ones. And remember, this is just the primaries within parties. Which races, let's start with one. Which race are you most interested
Well,
in?
just to go back to our earlier conversation, I think the fight over which Republican gets to take on Chris Mays is going to be a huge one. We've got Rodney Glassman, who's run for many offices in the past under the banner of both parties, and come close but no cigar. And then Senate President Warren Peterson. And that fight right now is really over experience because Peterson has not had his law license all that long. He was never really a practicing attorney beyond some, I guess, college level internship he had with the Scottsdale City Prosecutor's Office, whereas Glassman has had his license for, I think, like close to 20 years. So there's some fights over who's more qualified. There's fights over, who can actually do the job. Peterson says, I'm the Senate president. I've overseen all these amicus briefs and lawsuits and things on behalf of the legislature. This is more of an administrative position. So it's going to be really interesting to see which one of those comes out of there and whether this primary fight actually undercuts that whoever comes out of the fight when they attempt to take on Mays in the future.
Are they going to do more damage to each other so that when they have to take on
Exactly.
Chris
If
Mays?
they keep calling each other unqualified, well, then that means one of the unqualified people is going to.
And by the way, now I endorse that unqualified guy. All right, Dennis. What
Well,
race
I kind of
interests you?
agree with Wayne. I'm really interested and fascinated with watching that AG race play out. That is really interesting. If you saw one of the recent debates that they had, there was a lot of mudslinging going on there and a lot of personal attacks there. I did find it humorous that it's all about legal experience when Mr. Peterson has only had his law license for about 3 years or something like that. Glassman, most of his legal experiences with the JAG Corps. I don't know how much that prepares him to be the AG. I think kind of like Peterson has a bit of an argument there when he says that this is more of a managerial position than anything else because you are managing a big office. It just happens to be a law firm.
You're not in the courtroom, you're running an organization.
You're running an organization right there. But I got to tell you too, I'm also really interested in watching this suddenly interesting Congressional District 5 race. I mean, heading into this race, Mark Lamb, former
And
sheriff.
explain what Congressional District 5 is.
This is the East Valley, out in the Mesa area, Gilbert, stuff like that. Now, this is going into it. Everybody thought, Mark Lamb is a shoo-in. He had the name ID, but more importantly, he had that Trump endorsement. So everybody thinks it's going to be a cakewalk. Well, some investigations were put out there by the Arizona Republic that with some serious allegations of like some sexual misconduct, some inappropriate racist jokes, perhaps, allegations, and now is potentially some people think that this has really put this race in play. And there's a man out there, Daniel Keenan, who's a small business owner, is trying to take every bit of advantage of this. Now, I would still think that the former sheriff has still the front runner out there. He still has the Trump endorsement.
Understanding that likely whoever wins this
Yes.
primary
Yes.
will almost automatically become the representative. For
Well,
the
I was going to get to that too, because the winner of that primary is basically going to have that seat for as long as they want it, because they're replacing Andy Biggs. Andy Biggs didn't have to run for governor. He could have kept that seat for as long as he wanted to. He just wants to run for governor. Maybe he's tired of being a congressman. But if you're a Republican in that area, and you win this primary, you're probably going to be sitting in that position for years to come.
So speaking of governor, on the Democratic side, no primary, but there is an interesting primary on the Republican side.
Not so much these days. I mean,
Good signs out there.
I think there are some signs out there. I think most of us have kind of stopped paying attention to kind of the idea that there was a primary.
And why?
Because David Schweikert got in fairly late in the race. I think it was a surprise to a lot of folks. And it was made kind of a splash when he got in there, and then Karen Taylor Robeson dropped out, left it kind of one-on-one. But Schweikert he hasn't raised a lot of money. You haven't really heard a lot out of him, and it feels like everybody is kind of looking ahead to the general election. Andy Biggs is looking ahead to the general election. I think I haven't heard the Hobbs campaign or the Democrats spend a lot of time going after Schweikert. Everyone's focused on Biggs, and it seems like there's not a lot to watch over. I think the bigger action is I think AG CD5, where I think you mentioned Dennis mentioned Daniel Keenan. He put like a 1.5 million of his own money, I think, into the campaign, and he's finding a pretty good use for it right now. In the last couple of weeks since those allegations came out, he's hitting that stuff pretty hard. Lamb seems like he's laying pretty low lately, and and kind of ceding the spotlight. Well, he's in the spotlight in ways he doesn't want, but ceding kind of the initiative in the campaign to Keenan. I think the other big race to watch is going to be the 1st congressional district, which is
Replacing Schweiker.
to replace Schweiker. That'd be bigger ramifications, I think, right now of Schweiker's decision to run for governor. So you open up this very competitive.
And you both on
Yeah,
the Republican side and
on
the
both
Democrat
sides, yeah,
side,
it's
as
very-
opposed to some of these others, which are pretty lopsided with only going for the
Sure,
Republicans.
yeah, very competitive seat, very pivotal. Well, it's hard to imagine either party controlling Congress without winning CD1. And you have very hotly contested primaries on both sides. And this is one that voters, I think, will notice more, because that's where there's going to be a lot of money. And what voters are going to notice is what's on their TV when the game goes to a commercial break is going to be ads for both primaries, where you have. And both national parties, I think it's worth noting, have kind of picked candidates in these contested primaries, which is kind of unusual to see. Not unheard of, but unusual to see, especially on both sides there. Donald Trump.
So
is
who are the candidates who theoretically the parties have backed?
Well, on the Republican side, Donald Trump has endorsed Jay Feely, who was running in CD5 against Mark Lamb. Trump endorsed Lamb and said, "Hey, Jay, why don't you find yourself a new district?" So he did, and Trump endorsed him. He's running against John Troba and former state rep Joseph Chaplik, who is, I think most people would agree, the much more MAGA candidate. But Trump has endorsed Feely. The National Republican Congressional Committee has kind of followed suit and lined up behind Feely. On the Democratic side, you have, I think, there's several candidates. I think the 2 front runners look like the 2 front runners from 2 years ago, which was former state rep Amish Shah, who won the nomination in 2024, lost to Schweikert, and Marlene Galan Woods, who I think was 2nd place. And now the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has backed her as well. And I think these groups are probably not going to spend much money, if any money, for their preferred candidates in the primary. But what they are doing is sending a signal to outside groups, to big donors, say, hey, this is the person to back. This is the person we want in the general election. And I think you're going to see these ads blowing up on TV pretty soon.
You take a big risk, like you're at D-Trips, right? The DCCC, and you're back in Marlene Woods in that race. Well, Amish Shah very well could still win this primary. I mean, what does that say?
Won it before. He's a good campaigner.
It's a relentless door knocker.
Yeah, I mean, what happens? I mean, talk about egg on your face and a little bit of an embarrassment. What happens at that point? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but yeah, but I mean, that plays into some of the intrigue and why it's maybe one of those races to watch. And you get into the Republican side of that CD1 race. It's Donald Trump's golden pick. Is he still got that magic here in Arizona throughout this primary season? We've shown, with one exception in Iowa, that he's got a tight grip on his Republican Party, and that when he picks a candidate, they win that primary. Is that going to hold here in Arizona? We'll find out in that CD1 race.
All right, one of the goals of some of these candidates is to represent us at the state legislature, and let's talk about what's going on in the legislature, because I was looking through the usual collection of bills, and something jumped out at me. There were several bills that I noticed that went through with unanimous support. Both sides of the aisle voting for them. Now, all we hear about is the contention, but I thought it was interesting, and can we talk about some of those?
Yeah, and this, for those of us that cover the legislature on a daily basis, this actually happens more than you think. There are lots of bills that go through with lots of bipartisan support, but they're usually not the high-profile ones. And maybe that's the difference here, at least with one of the bills you're mentioning, which has to do with getting rid of squatters. That's been a problem people have, complained about for a long time, and basically.
And this the law passed by the legislature would make it easier for landlords to get rid of someone who's squatting on their property.
They find someone staying in the home, and they're not supposed to be there, and the person refuses to leave. I think under the current process, it can take upwards of 2 weeks to try and get rid of someone. This would kind of streamline that down to just a few days. And I think one of the reasons it got that bipartisan support is it's really locked in on someone who owns a property and someone is in there who isn't supposed to be there. It's not a situation where someone lived there under a lease, didn't pay their rent, and now you want to get rid of them real quick.
It's just someone who's taken over the house.
Exactly. So I think that's why you saw Democrats get on board, Governor Katie Hobbs, because we do have an eviction crisis in this county. My station's reported on it quite a bit. But it had a lot to do with people who can't pay their rent, things like that. And I don't think, especially Democrats, wanted to go after those people. But if you're just going to go after people who are basically breaking into a home and squatting there, then I think everyone got on board.
Another area that's getting some attention with kumbaya is HOAs.
Yeah, and what's more bipartisan than hating your HOA? I was going to say. But there's a couple of HOA bills have gone through with either unanimous or bipartisan support. Governor Hobbs recently signed one, which I believe the wording is that the HOA boards have to act in kind of in a neutral and fair manner.
To treat their members fairly.
Which is, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think we're going to see a lot of litigation in a lot of individual cases, and asking a judge to say, what exactly does that mean?
That's case law, now they're putting it into law. And then there was anher one just dealing with shades in backyards, correct?
Yeah, you got to have shade in your backyard, right?
And now
Because from a person who had her HOA tell her to take down a pergola or something in the backyard, and she happens to know a state representative said, hey, this is a problem. So
this is Arizona.
How can you tell people not to put up a shade structure in their backyard?
So real quickly, we're getting short on time here. The other 64,000-pound gorilla that the legislature needs to deal with is the budget. Now, I know we talked about it on the roundtable last week. We're a week later. Anything else to talk about?
There's hope that there's going to try to move something next week. I mean, we've got that July 1st deadline that's starting to become a reality again, like it did last year. I heard that they're going to try to move that something forward next week. I don't have a whole lot of details, but one of my sources told me that one of the big hangups with this was the extension of Proposition 123, that education funding source. I'm being told that that's probably dead and it's not going to happen this year. Maybe next year.
Yeah, I think about a month ago when budget talks restarted, Senate President Peterson told me that we're 97% of the way there. And I think 2 weeks later, he's saying, we were sitting right here 2 weeks ago, and Wayne said, well, Senate President Peterson says they're 97% of the way there. And yesterday he told me 99%, so it looks like we've made some progress. But he acknowledged, that last 1% could be tricky. I, exchanged a message with John Kavanaugh, the Senate Appropriations Chair. He said, we've got to cut, it could happen as soon as next week. They've got, as long as they resolve a couple of major issues, which he said were not necessarily big money issues. But he said, or it could just all fall apart, which we've definitely seen happen before.
Which we've seen more than a few times. Just 15 seconds left.
Yeah, I would say that, if not next week, I'm pretty confident, just like in previous years, we'll get it done before that July 1st deadline.
So you think we will make the July 1 deadline?
Yeah, or they could do like they did a few decades ago and throw a blanket over the clock if it passes midnight and finish those negotiations, a few hours into July.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. Jeremy, Wayne, Dennis, thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. That'll do it for this edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Rick DeBrule, of course, filling in for Ted Simons, and Ted Simons will be back next week. Until then, have a great weekend.
Hello, I'm Alice Ferris, and we hope you enjoyed Arizona Horizon. For more than 40 years, viewers in Arizona have relied on Ted Simons and Arizona Horizon for in-depth coverage of issues of concern to our community. As you are probably aware, federal funding for